Set in between the Undiscovered Country and Star Trek Generations, The Ashes of Eden shows what an unofficial seventh film with the original series crew would have looked like. Much like how the search for Spock mirrors the Wrath of Khan, The Ashes of Eden deepens the conspiracy that began in the Undiscovered Country. The conspirators don't want to start a war, they just want to stop the peace because they sacrificed their peacetime selves for a violent life of service to the Federation. That violent life comes with a cost to their souls for each life they take. But a soldier rationalizes that cost as the necessary price paid for freedom's sake. The conspiracy began by Admiral Cartwright is full of soldiers that just can't handle the idea of peace. Because if the war wasn't absolutely necessary, then the blood spilled by their hands wasn't necessary. That would contradict their entire life's rationale given to them by the Federation. The idea of peace conflicts with their very concept of reality. Therefore, they must fight back. The Ashes of Eden takes that fight started in the Undiscovered Country and puts a personal spin on it for Captain James T. Kirk, having an old rival named Androvar Drake become the commander-in-chief of Starfleet. Years before, Drake's wife was killed by the Klingons. Kirk stopped that war before it could escalate. In Drake's mind, Kirk had sided with the Klingons. So, if Drake couldn't have his revenge against the Klingons, then Kirk would have to do. So when Kirk's son, David Marcus, went looking for protomatter for the Genesis device, Drake was happy to oblige. At best, they could develop a new weapon against the Klingons. At least, he'd see Kirk's son killed by his own folly. Not as good as killing Kirk, of course, but that would have to do. Until Kirk brokered that final peace with the Klingons at the Kittimer Accords and stopped Admiral Cartwright's conspiracy to stop the peace. That peace spit in the memory of Drake's dead wife, and Starfleet's newest CNC would rather see the galaxy burn than move on from his pain. Drake continues the conspiracy to prevent peace, sending Chekhov and Uhura as undercover spies to stop illegal Klingon arms dealers. During their time undercover, Chekhov gets the most character development of the bridge crew, becoming full of anger at the system he works for. Because even when it's working correctly, a system can feel unfeeling compared to the cogs it produces. But what does a cog do when it no longer fits in the machine? Because at a certain point in life, youth becomes a choice. Some make the choice. Others allow the choice to be made for them. They spend existence in a stream of water being carried from one event to the next. And then there are those that demand to swim. James T. Kirk has swam his whole life, refusing to ever accept a no-win scenario. This carried him through a career in Starfleet, turning death into a fighting chance for life. But eventually, the currents of time are stronger. Kirk was a man perfectly designed for one job, to be the captain of the U.S.S. Enterprise. Stuck forever in his purpose, he lived his life in that perfect moment. But now, the Enterprise was to be decommissioned, and his crew scattered to the far stars. Now his perfect moment that gave no thought to what happened next was over. But at a diplomatic function full of pomp and circumstance, a woman comes across Kirk's view. A beautiful half Romulan, half Klingon named Talani from an abandoned joint colony named Chal that needed the help of Captain James T. Kirk of the U.S.S. Enterprise. Because her world held the fountain of youth and it needed a defender. But more than that, it offered Kirk purpose. And it was in that purpose that Kirk made his choice. After the completion of filming for Star Trek Generations, William Shatner found himself wrapping up a 30-year career as Captain Kirk, having died on screen. But much like his most famous character, Shatner turned death into a fighting chance for life and decided to continue the character in written word. Out of the entire Shatner-verse series of novels, I can hear the voice of William Shatner the loudest in the Ashes of Eden. Captain Kirk is seen everywhere he goes, unable to blend in. He's a hero of the Federation, much like William Shatner is to Trekkies everywhere. There's a line in the book that sticks with me where he says, "If everyone knows you, then no one knows you. If everyone is your friend, a man who has a million friends truly has none, because how can you repay that burden of friendship?" Much like Shatner, Kirk is going through a midlife crisis. His friends can see that. Talani is way too young for Kirk, who's 62 years old. Talani is north of 20, but not by much. Spock points out that she's using him and the access his reputation grants in exchange for sex because Kirk feels useless and desperate. It's a brutal statement that only a true friend could make. And Kirk knows he's right. He just can't admit it to himself. So he takes the job and the decommissioned Enterprise to Chal, where Kirk feels younger than he has in years. But he can't lie to himself forever. No matter how much he wants to believe the beautiful Talani and her reasons for bringing him there. Chal holds a secret that would start a war between the Federation and the Klingons. A war that the Commander-in-Chief of Starfleet wants to exact revenge for the death of his wife. Once the fantasy of eternal youth is shattered, Kirk must uncover that deadly secret before Admiral Drake can destroy the fragile peace. The Ashes of Eden kicked off a 10-book series stretching well over a decade, plugging Captain James T. Kirk deep into the next generation era of Star Trek, soaring with the strength of Judith and Garfield Reeves-Stevens as co-writers. This is an incredible start to the series, and a wonderful new timeline to explore for fans of the original series films.